Hi and hello everyone. Welcome back to this PMP exam. They are more focused towards totally traditional methods. We have for sure learned about this agile methodology, but we have not actually understood this concept much in depth. About half of our PMP exam is going to have questions from agile and hybrid approaches. So I strongly believe that we should all focus on the mindset of this agile methodology or agile approach with some extra additional care. So let us try and understand about this new agile methodology, what this agile is. Okay, so this is just a bit about agile methodology. I'll give a short introduction and then we'll get started with each section. So agile methods, they are not additional process. Keep this in mind. Agile is not even a process. So don't get confused that we have traditional processes and then we have agile management processes. No, agile management is just an approach to do all those 49 processes that we have learned so far. They are the same processes. Whatever you have learned, it is still valid. When PMP says that they're asking 50% of the questions in agile way, it's only about the mindset, how you will approach to answer this in agile methodology. So agile is again not a single approach, right? It's a housing or it's a umbrella of multiple agile approaches. Let me explain you with a simple illustration. So as you can see here, Kanban methodology that we have learned before. If you remember that there was a board, the to-do list, and then the progress list, and then block list, and then the final list. That Kanban board which uses sticky notes, even that is an agile process. So similarly, Scrum is one of the agile processes. So similarly, we have extreme programming, we have crystal versions, we have agile unified processes, we have development method called the DSDM. So we have feature driven development. All these systems, they are agile methods, right? So agile is not just a single process. It's not a single method. It's a grouping or, it's an umbrella term for all these mindsets. So with that understood, I think let's quickly understand how we are going to proceed with this class, because until now we have discussed on a set methodology, like we have discussed first outputs, and then we have discussed inputs, and then we have discussed the tools and technologies. Here we are not going to discuss the topic in this way, because as I said, these are not the processes that we are going to learn. Here we are going to learn the agile mindset, how we should start thinking away from the traditional methodology and how we should change our mindset to agile way of thinking. Right now, the questioning is 50%, but who knows, maybe in the coming exams in the next year or the next year, the complete PMP exam could be in agile management. So a lot of companies are following this agile management. And before we move on, let me give you a brief about the history of this agile management. Agile management was started focusing the IT sector, all the software developers, the project management within the IT sector. That was the first target for agile management. But now it is slowly being accepted by a lot of other industries, right? So manufacturing, production, automobile, all of these industries, they are accepting agile management because the thinking or the approach is quite flexible. We get much more better results with agile management. We will understand about this in depth. So first thing is agile methodology, where I'll take you through a lot of new agile items and basically introduce to the agile way of working, whatever I gave you an introduction about. So we will understand how different it is from the traditional approaches. And then we will go ahead and define the Scrum. Scrum is nothing but a set of rules and practices which are based on three key pillars. What are those three key pillars? We have transparency, we have inspection, we have adaptation. We'll know and understand about this Scrum in depth in the lesson to come. And then the last step is the roles and responsibility. So who is the product owner? Who is the Scrum Master? Who is the development team? Right? So how different they are from the stakeholders? Are they the same or not? So such things we will learn in roles and responsibilities. So let's quickly get started. Agile methodology. So being agile, what does being agile mean? Being agile means building things in increments. Okay, so traditionally what happens is, in traditional project management methodology, the things are built as a whole, or the results are known only at the end of the project. But in agile, there is incremental feedback that we keep on receiving about the project status. So it's a set of small progressive steps which gives us continuous feedback about the status of this bigger task. Right? We can consider that there is a huge task, and then we can divide that into a smaller task, just like the WBS work breakdown structure. So these smaller tasks, as we keep on finishing them, they keep on adding the progress of the complete project. So what happens in the traditional waterfall methodology approach is that the end customer, or even for that matter, the stakeholder who is working on the project, they are always in the dark, right? They don't know about the end result. What is going to happen at the end of the project? Whether my project is going to succeed, whether is it going to fail, is it going to ask for any changes in my project? So there is no clear-cut idea until we totally finish the product in traditional methodology. But this agile method, it's totally opposite. It gives us feedback about the direction of the project path continuously. So how can we expand better? Like, take an example of we driving on a highway, and we want to, or we intend to take a turn. So traditional method gives us, just a hard left or a hard right, because there is no signboard that is warning us to take the hard right. So you can imagine how difficult it is going to be when we are just driving at 90 and then we have to take a hard right turn. Well, it's too disturbing and troubling. But the agile method is like having all those road signs, having the smoother curve to the right or to the left. So the gliding smoothly, having the road banking. So anything that makes our process smoother, and anything which continuously gives us feedback, like those signboards, like there is a curve ahead. So that's the basic difference about the traditional methodology and the agile methodology. All right, so let's get into this. Introduction. I think we have already been introduced. So waterfall versus agile. So what happens here? In waterfall or traditional methods, the planning of the project is done for the entire project. Here we are understanding the differences between waterfall and the agile. So in waterfall or the traditional methodology, as I told you before, we do the planning for the complete project. When I say project, the project is not just for 2 or 3 months. A huge project is going to last for like 5 years to come. Imagine constructing a huge bridge over a river, right? So this bridge planning could be done for like 5 years, and the waterfall methodology defines the scope for that all 5 years right now. So how difficult it is going to be, you can just imagine. So, but the agile method is not like that. It's a progressive plan, right? So maybe we have a quarterly planning or a half yearly planning or 1 year plan for progressing the bridge. After this 1 year plan is complete, we take the feedback whether the project status is going as per our plan, or is it getting deviated, are we faster, are we slower. All this feedback we get, and then we change the planning for the next section or sector accordingly. So that is the main key difference between the traditional and agile approaches. So also the traditional methods are not so change friendly. When we talk about a second difference, they are not so change friendly, right? So a tremendous energy and so many resources are involved in something if it is changed in a traditional project. So the change management process in waterfall is one of the most difficult things to handle. So if you propose any change in a traditional method of project management, straight away you are going to get a lot of back pressure from the stakeholders. They will straight away refuse you first and then listen to you. So it's not flexible at all. Whereas in the agile method, it always welcomes change, because agile method, this mindset itself thinks that the change has come for good. So when I say change, accepting the change is not possible here, because they think the traditional method is more careful, right? So being careful is for sure important thing, but in the current trend of emerging technologies, we have a faster changing world. If we stick to just a traditional method or the traditional methodology for implementing the changes, and if we are not flexible at all, it's going to be very difficult for us to compete in the race. So agile approach, it is attempting to break this style of working and welcoming the change. So another difference between the standard traditional and the agile methodology is adaptation. So the team feedback on the current plan of the project is not so welcome in the traditional methods. Usually the plan is done at the very beginning of the project, so all rules and guidelines, they are set, and there is no changing the rules once the plan is set. Even if the things are going to be difficult direction, even if the most of the stakeholders are having difficulty with some process, the waterfall method, it just doesn't allow for the predefined process to change. But agile, on the other hand, has special retrospective meetings. One of the process of the agile itself is a retrospective meeting, just to understand if the stakeholders have something to say about the current style of working. So what happens is, even if one of the team members gives a feedback that something is not going well, this proposal is very well discussed within that retrospective meeting within the team. And if agreed by everybody in the team, the Scrum Master takes a decision that we can change the process immediately, starting from that very hour. So, lastly, the feedback on the final result. So, as we learned in the introduction, the waterfall method doesn't provide feedback of the project during the life cycle. So, for us to understand if the project is actually succeeded, we have to wait until it performs the application, or in the field, or maybe even the final proving testing of the product. But agile agile is not like this. Every sprint meet is an increment to the project, and we can have a clear understanding of the status of the project. And I think we have discussed about this enough in the introduction class. Moving on, inversion of targets. I think this is something important, and I think this is also examination friendly. So please pay a little extra attention here. Waterfall methodology and agile methodology, right? So you please shift your focus towards these two triangles which are inverted between each other. So the triangle that we see on the top left, so this is the basis of how waterfall or the traditional methodology is designed. You can see what happens here is that traditionally the scope of the project is quite fixed. So we have to spend all the time and cost based on the decision of scope, right? So building that bridge in 5 years, that is the scope that is defined. So, and then we have to keep adding our extra time to achieve that, scope target, and we have to even spend a lot of cost, right? So what happens here is the time can shoot out, the cost can shoot out, but the total amount of the work that needs to be done, that doesn't change. That is fixed. So this is the basis of the traditional waterfall method, and there is no flexibility to change the scope. This is the reason why the changes are not acceptable quite well in the waterfall methodology. But on the contrary, if you shift your focus on the inverted triangle here, that is the agile approach, you can see that the time and cost are our primary fixed targets. So whatever is on the top is here considered to be the primary target, and then whatever is in the bottom is considered to be the targets that we do to support the primary target. So here the primary target is the time and primary target is the cost. So within the stipulated time, within the stipulated cost, we have to finish the project. So, and then scope can slowly vary, right? If you are running out of the time, we have to increase the scope for that particular sprint. We have discussed what sprint is. So a sprint could be a 2 week run or 3 week run. So in this 2 weeks, if we are running out of time, we have to think about adding a little more work than we can, right? So that is the agile methodology. We will understand that, okay, we are running a bit slow. Now let us add a little more work, run that extra mile. Or it could be the other way around also. If we are having a little bit of time, or if we are running a bit faster, we can relax ourselves for that week. Sometimes even one of the sprint meetings even gets cancelled. We'll understand what these sprint meetings are, what these sprints are in just a bit. So with this approach, we have a better control over the total cost of the project. The deliverables are complete within the time, because the time and the targets and the outputs are like quite flexible, right? So all changes are basically welcome in the agile method. Moving on, agile values. Yeah, this is an important section, and one or two questions might definitely come here. What does this talk about? It's about what do you value more if you follow the agile methods, right? So you have two quite contrary options, not so contrary, but if you prefer one over the other, that tells you what your methodology or mindset is. So if you wish to follow the agile methodology, you have to value the left column over the right column. Let me explain you with these examples. So individuals and interactions over the process and tools, right? So that is a mindset. We value individuals and interactions more than process and tools. if you want to follow the agile methodology or agile approach. So we know and understand the process and tools are very important for the project. But without people or the individuals, all these processes and tools are there basically useless. So the agile approach values the people or the individuals over the tools. So it values interactions over the processes. So I think you're clear about this. So let's quickly run over these examples. So working result over the comprehensive documentation. I said result because it could be product, process, or result. Right? So don't get confused. So we know and understand that the documents are important, but who actually reads a car driving manual? You might have driven a car, you might have purchased it, and basically somebody even doesn't know that there is a manual in the car. So documentation is not so quite often read. So the final product that we get to see, that is of more interest for the end customer. So the final product or the incremental progress is more important in the agile work than the paperwork. So the agile values the real result more than the documentation. And then customer collaboration is valued more than the negotiation of contract. So what happens here is the end user of the product must be in agreement with the maker or seller that that the deliverables that are decided at the beginning of the project, all the objectives, they're all met. So there is a, DOD, that is definition of done. So what does it mean? When we say something is done, both the parties have to agree what it means by done, right? So for example, you have asked to paint a wall. So the painter might tell that it is done, right? But for a customer, it is done only when the paint is as per the requirements of the end user. So the agile approach focuses, a lot on the values, all these values that we see. Okay, I think we still have one more value to focus on. So what happens here is, as mentioned in the previous slides, agile approach values the change more than a fixed scope of the product or result. Right. So we need to remember that the agreed deliverables, they are still met here. But even if there is a slight change in these deliverables, the agile approach welcomes this change, considering that every change is a positive change for the project. Moving on, the 12 guiding principles. So I'm not going to read out each and every one of these 12 guiding principles. The source of these guiding principles is actually recorded here, agilemanifesto.org. So all these principles are important for a project manager who wants to follow the agile principles. You can please visit this website, the agilemanifesto.org. This was developed, as I said, in back in 2001 as an introduction to the agile for the IT industry, basically. So this mentions clearly what 12 guiding principles are, along with the 4 values that we have learned before. We have learned the 4 agile values in the previous slide. So this website talks about those 4 values and these 12 guiding principles for us to develop this agile approach. So all these processes or the guiding principles, they are very easy. They are quite self-explanatory. I strongly recommend you all to go through this very simple website. Just have a look at it once. You'll have a fair understanding of what these guiding principles are. Moving on. Okay, next step is defining Scrum. So Scrum method. This is one of the agile methodologies. You might have remembered the umbrella under which there are so many agile methods. So Scrum is one of such methodologies of agile. So there are other methods also, like Kanban. We have learned Kanban before. I talked about DSDM, AUP, extreme programming, etc. So Scrum method is the latest emerging trend. Most of the organizations are following this Scrum. The XP or the extreme programming is also one of the fastly being accepted methodology. But if in case the time permits in this complete series, we will dedicate some time also for this. Or it's not important for the PMP exam right now. It's an additional subject. So we'll focus on Scrum methodology for the sake of examination. So let's go ahead and define the Scrum. So basically, Scrum is nothing but a set of practices and guidelines. So the rules about how we play the game of this agile management. So this is majorly based on the 3 key qualities. First thing is transparency, and second key pillar is the inspection, and third is the adaptation. Let's understand what these terms are. So the Scrum, it has to be as transparent as possible. What do we mean by transparency? We mean that everything that is going on within the project, when I say everything, it is the status of the project, the progress of the project, the latest approvals of the project, or what are the next steps that are going to come. So everybody in the team might not be aware of the complete project life cycle, right? What are the decisions that are going on in the middle of the project? There might be a customer meeting which talks about some changes, some key changes, which might affect the work of some important key stakeholder. So all this important information that is important about the project, we will have much better clarity through this Scrum methodology. So it must be very clearly visible, or at least have a communication plan that, okay, I'm going to communicate about these statuses in the next sprint to come, right? So some communication plan has to be in place. So that is a key pillar of this total Scrum methodology. And then if we talk about the inspection, there has to be an inspection at frequent intervals. So what are we inspecting here? We are inspecting whether the complete set of activities, whether they're actually going towards the right direction or not. When we are in a sprint, what happens is the total number of stakeholders, the 10 or 12 stakeholders that we have, usually the Scrum team is limited to 9, the most or the biggest number in this Scrum as defined by this Agile practitioners is that the team has to be 3 to 9. So these 9 team members, they are going to present a lot of backlog tasks, and from this huge list of backlog tasks, the Scrum Master is going to decide which tasks are to be prioritized and which tasks are to be done for that particular sprint. So we have to inspect whether these tasks are actually contributing towards the progress of the project, or are we just running in circles over and over. And then he also should inspect whether the tasks are actually being executed, or are the stakeholders just closing the tasks just for the sake of closing. So that kind of inspection is important here. And adaptation talks, I think, very much about accepting the changes. Sometimes negative changes are also accepted, sometimes positive changes are also accepted. When we say negative changes, let's say one of the requirements is dropped out. So we have worked on this requirement for like 2 sprints, so that's like 1 month, and then the customer says we don't want this requirement at all. So it's also good, right? We will at least stop working on this further, adding value for this requirement further. So such adaptation of positive changes or negative changes, everything has to be welcome in the Scrum methodology. So I think this is the whole idea of what a Scrum is. Let's move on to the next slide. Activities. So we will define all these activities that are going to happen in the Scrum. So first, let us learn what sprints are. What are sprints? Right. So sprints are nothing but a predefined iterations of the work. So I think you all remember this rolling wave from one of the lessons. So this talks about Agile very much. So this is the actual sprint. What happens here is, after this is a sprint cycle, and then there'll be a second sprint, third sprint, fourth sprint, and this little arrow talks about the daily Scrum meetings. Like, we will understand what these Scrum meetings are in just a bit. So we have already touched upon this, and I think sprint is usually 2 to 4 week cycle of all the activities that are related to the project. So at the start of the project, we have a big list of to-do items, and we target to close these items at the end of the sprint. As I said, if there are 9 stakeholders or 9 key team members who bring their tasks, let's say 9, and each person brings out 3 tasks. So we have for one sprint 27 tasks to be finished. So after the end of this 2 week sprint, all the 27 are targeted to be closed. And if not, whatever 2-3 tasks that are left, they will be added to the next sprint to come. So second thing is planning of a sprint. First, a backlog of all the activities is created. How is this backlog created? First, we have a product backlog. Backlog is nothing but a total list of tasks which are not prioritized, right? So we just write down or list down all the tasks that are related or targets to achieve in a product. When we talk about the example of a product or a process or a result, first we list down all the targets that we have to achieve in that particular product. So from this product backlog, a project backlog is formed. So each of the product backlog might have another further list of project backlogs. So such all that list of activities with identified roles and responsibilities is listed down before. Usually, for creating this backlog, you have to be great visionary, right? So there are multiple components in a complex project. Like for example, consider a bicycle, right? So a bicycle itself might have 100 parts. So all these 100 parts might have unique product requirements or product backlogs, and from these each of the product backlog, we will have thousands of project backlogs. Right? So all this cannot be listed by one single person. So the development team members themselves, they contribute to this backlog, right? So all the 9 key stakeholders that were identified, they will list down that okay, for me to finish my project or my product, I need to finish these tasks. So such a list is formed, and then the backlog is created. So once the backlog is created, it will be prioritized again based on the product owner's decision and the development team's decision in that sprint meeting, and then it is initiated for the scrum. Hence the sprint is set to be started. If in case consider one of the tasks is like very huge, creation of one of the, let's say, mechanical or a gear cycle, the gear development in that cycle, it's a huge task and it cannot be finished in this 4 week sprint or 2 week sprint. So what happens is they will further break down these tasks again based on that WBS methodology, and these subtasks are added to these sprints. Next thing is agile meetings. Usually a weekly update meeting is called agile meetings. Although we have a 2 week sprint or a 3 week sprint, agile meetings are this weekly status update meetings. Usually what happens is in the daily sprint meeting or a sprint retrospection or even the sprint closure meeting, there is no detailed update about the tasks. What happens here is we list down 10 tasks and they just discuss about the blockers in these meetings. So out of the 10 tasks that I have, 2 tasks have blockers. So, hey, the Scrum Master, please help me remove these blockers. So that's what happens in these sprint meetings because they're very short in time. But in the agile meetings that we're talking about, the team members or the development team members, they are given more time to explain the statuses of the tasks. So we cannot just give a high level or a bird's eye view of the tasks that are going on. So the detailed status of each one of the tasks is given in these agile meetings. That is what this is for. Usually this is chaired or owned by the product owner, not the Scrum Master. So these roles and responsibilities of who a product owner is, who is a Scrum Master, we will learn a bit. Just keep it in the back of your mind that agile meetings are done by product owner, but daily sprint meeting, sprint retrospection, and sprint closure, these are done by the Scrum Master. So with that said, daily sprint meeting, what is this? They are, as I said, they are arranged by the Scrum Master. This is a very quick status update meeting. This is usually 15 to 30 minutes, but mostly it is 15 minutes only. And so typically what happens here is just the blockers are discussed. So for the 10 problems that I listed, they are in progress, but 2 of them have blockers because of some of the stakeholder. And that stakeholder, developer, do not have influence over. So the Scrum Master, who is more influential than the developer, he will go and speak to that particular stakeholder who is blocking the issue, or speak to the customer or speak to a vendor, whoever is blocking that issue, whoever is creating that impediment, he will speak to them and then clear that impediment for us to move ahead. So what is a sprint retrospection? This, I think, as we discussed, this is the core value of our agile practice. What happens here is that the development team is gathered once, in every sprint by the Scrum Master to put forward any sort of problems that are facing in the sprint methodology. Right. So here we are not discussing mostly about the project updates or the product updates. It's about the methodology itself. Is there any change that is required to be happening here? Like for example, as I told, the sprint could be 2 to 4 weeks. So one of the team members thinks the 4 weeks is too long. Let us do it for 3 weeks only, or 2 weeks sprint only. So this is discussed well within the team. This proposal is put forward, and then if everybody agrees that yeah, the sprint should be just 3 weeks longer, not 4 weeks, then the decision is taken immediately. Or another example could be the frequency of the daily sprint meeting also. Right? So as I said, this is a daily sprint meeting. It has to be done every day. But if the team thinks because of the organization priority or sometimes the project is too heavy, so much workload is there that the team cannot meet every day. So they will again accordingly decide that, okay, we will meet 3 times in a week instead of 5 times. So all this retrospection is done, and they are, all the changes are welcome. And if everybody in the team agrees, then the same is implemented here. What is a sprint closure meeting? The last one, as the name suggests, after the agreed time slots of the sprint, the Scrum Master calls for a closure meeting. So the development team has to present the statuses of the tasks closed. So if they are closed, it is not very much discussed. But if some task is pending, why it is pending? So for the closed tasks also, if there is something new lessons learned, that lessons learned is shared with the team. So what happens is, for each and every task that we are closing, because of this new technology that we are getting, I think we are right now, most of the organizations, they are using the tools like the Kanban tools, like for example, Jira. Jira is a very famous tool. It's a very old software, but still it is becoming more and more prominent because of the Jira. Or some people use OneNote as a very important tool. So in all these tools, each of the task is listed and it is given as separate dedicated space where you can record the story of how it is closed. So from the start, when the sprint begins, they will start the task, they'll name the task, about what is to be done, they'll describe the task. And then as the sprint progresses, after 2 days or 3 days, if the project team member has added some value to it, he will mention that status within against that task. So even during the daily sprint meeting, the Scrum Master will ask these development team members whatever statuses that they are giving, they have to be recorded against that particular task. So at the end of the sprint closure meeting, there is a nice story formed about how the task has started, what value the developer has added, the key stakeholder has added, or what were the blockers, how were these blockers removed. All this will become a very valuable lessons learned at the end of the sprint closure. And because it is recorded, it is there forever in the organization. It can form a organizational process asset for the projects to come. So I think with that said, we have closed another topic of defining Scrum. Let's move to the roles and responsibilities section. So in this section, what we will do is we will understand different roles that are available in this agile approach, or the Scrum approach to be precise. There are so many agile approaches. So as we are discussing about Scrum, we will only talk about this Scrum methodology here. So what are their key roles, key responsibilities, and key activities of each person? You'll understand this. So as you can see here, there are majorly 4 types of roles, and some additional roles also we will discuss. So the product owner is somebody who is an expert of the technology, so who can talk to the customers of this product. So basically, he is the architect of this complete technology. So Scrum Master is us. When I say us, it is the project manager. So our main target will be, to engage with the people in this new project, and get things moving. Right. So that is the main job of a project manager. We have to get things moving. And development team is the stakeholders or the team members who are directly working for the project. And the managing team are the people who has this approving authority, right? So they are the top bosses, the functional leaders. So they are the higher management who assume these leadership roles and who can actually approve something, right? They have the authority or power to stop something or give additional approvals for something. So they are this managing team. And other roles are like the customer. For example, the customer also plays an important role in the total Scrum methodology. And there are some other non-contributing stakeholders also, right, who are directly not contributing to the project, but they are acting as a support for the project. Like for example, consultants. We will consult them. They are not directly related to the team, but they still contribute to the project, right? So such roles. So let's have a quick look at each one of them. The product owner. So product ownership is a actually multi-faced job. So firstly, the product owner should be aware of the technology, because everyone in the development team are going to look up to this product owner if in case they have some issue. So he's like the big boss, or not actually the boss. He is the one who is master of all the subcomponents, the jack of all trades, who at least knows the functionality of each and every subcomponent. So he is aware of the technology that is going on in the product or the organization. So it goes without saying that he has to have a sound knowledge on all the subcomponents. If he doesn't, then he's not the right product owner. So we have to rethink about who the product owner should be. So she or he is like the key person in the project who has experience doing a lot of projects within that organization, who knows the way in and way out from this organization. So, and he knows a lot of people within the organization, and also might be knowing a lot of people within the customer organization because he has experience working, with those customers before. So also the product owner connects daily with the customers, not daily, at least frequently. Whenever we say there is a sprint, he interacts with the customers quite frequently to keep on updating the statuses of the project. So one more responsibility of the product owner is the task list. He provides the backlog tasks to the team. Backlog actually starts from the product, as we have discussed before, and the product backlogs are then converted to the project backlogs. This activity is actually done by the product owner's supervision. So the priority of the tasks is also set totally by the discretion of product owner. So if the team brings out the list of 10 or 15 tasks to be done, he is the one who decides which is the topmost priority, right? Of course, the team members can propose that, okay, I want to do second task before the first one. So if he can convince the product owner, he will just approve it. So ultimately, the final decision on whether the task is on the priority, or the final decision on whether the task is complete, or as we discussed, done. So that done stamp is given by this product owner. And when we say delegation, he has the authority to delegate these tasks to the team members. In most of the cases, the tasks are related to multiple commodities within the product. So if in case some special task has come, for example, so let's say a new concept we have to work on. So the product owner, he has the authority of assigning who has to do this task. We have, let's say, 9 key team members. Out of these 9 key team members, although the responsibilities are defined, product owner can decide out of these 9 key team members who can take up this task, right? So he has the power of delegation. Okay, let's understand who the Scrum Master is. So typically, the project managers assume this responsibility. The Scrum Master has to be, well versed with the agile methods, the Scrum approach, etc. The Scrum Master, also he understands the blockers for the team, because he understands this from the Scrum meetings that he arranges, and he works on removing these obstacles one by one. He may have to speak with multiple parties, as I told before, and he can do it very easily because he has this level of influence over the power, right? A project manager has contacts in the top management also. We have understood the influence of a project manager. So because he's quite influential, he can, he is capable of removing these impediments and moving the tasks ahead. So we have learned how he facilitates multiple meetings here. So different 3 or 4 meetings that we discussed, the Scrum Master is the owner of those meetings, or the facilitator, or the host of these meetings. The product owner, he is also responsible to answer the Scrum Master. So although we know that product owner is a expert in his own field, but when it comes to project updates, even product owner has to answer to the Scrum Master. So Scrum Master is basically the project owner. So he will be questioned if something goes wrong in the project. And when we talk about questioning, when Scrum Master takes a decision, even a CEO cannot alter it. So he is that powerful. He has sole responsibility to decide about what is going to happen, within that sprint. Moving on, next thing is the Scrum development team. This is not a single team. When I say single team, this is not just the purchase team. This is not just the logistics team. This is not just the production team or quality team. It's a cross-functional team, right? So everybody from multiple functions, they come together, they join hands together to form this development team in the Scrum. So we have seen so far in the examples that we have quoted before, stating how some of the stakeholders get quite busy. So in this Scrum methodology, this is not so much encouraged, right? So the multiple projects handled by one single stakeholder, that still happens in the organizations, but preferably not, right? So the Scrum recommends that the stakeholder has to work only on one project and not on the second one. So what is this Bruce Tuckman model? I have included only this model because in every exam that we see, we will get at least one question about this Bruce Tuckman model, a very important model for the exam. So at least one question, please expect even in the exam to come. So what happens here? We have 5 stages of a team. because we are talking about the development team here, we have 5 stages of a team in this Bruce Tuckman model. What are those 5 stages? First stage is the forming stage. I will just use the initials. So what happens in the forming stage is this is a very early stage of the team, right? So this is a stage of formation where people are very new to each other. There may not be so many disputes between each team. So that is the forming stage, and then comes the storming stage. What happens in the storming stage? People are fighting for power. So because the leadership within the team, who has to listen to whom? The fight for the power, that is actually seen here about different working differences, some decision differences because of different cultures, or maybe R&D team tries to influence the purchase team, or the purchase team tries to influence the R&D team. So such storms keep happening in this stage. So this is called the storming stage. And then there is norming stage. I'm representing it with N. Norming stage, this is when the things start to settle down. What happens here is after the storming, the people within the team, they start understanding each other. The differences are cleared out, and then they understand each other's working styles. So the fights are all calmed down, and then there is a harmony, growing. It is still not found, but it is growing within the team. And then the next stage is a performing stage. So what happens here? This is like the peak stage of the project where there is nice harmony between the team members. So everybody is happy or understanding about the decisions about each other. If a production team says something, the quality team totally accepts this because they understand that the production team has said something with a prior experience, because they know each other now. So that stage of the team is performing stage. So if in case one of the key members here is no longer in the project, so or a new team member has been added, or somebody has left the organization and there is a void, so in these cases the cycle is again repeated back to the storming stage. So any disturbance in the performing stage, this is very, very important. This you might also attract some questions here. So if any disturbance happens within the performing team, then this performing team is immediately converted to the storming team, not the norming team. Keep that in mind. So again, from the storming team, it will again become norming and then performing. So is this all? No. We have one more stage called adjourning. So what is this adjourning? It's like a stage where the project is closed for XYZ reasons. It could be also a successful closure or unsuccessful closure. So in this case, whatever the team that we have decided here at the stage of forming, that gets totally dissolved, right? So the team no longer exists anymore. So that is called the adjourning stage. So this is this Bruce Tuckman model. So there will definitely be so many questions about this. Like they will quote an example about the behavior of a team. Like they say, so many people in the team are frequently fighting. What stage of the team is this? So we all understand that it is the storming stage of the team. So similarly, a question might come that everybody is in great harmony. What is the stage of this team? So that is a performing team. So such questions are very, very common. So just understand this. Moving, managing team and other roles. We have discussed about who the higher management is. So she is somebody who has authority over the decisions. So a manager who can approve the project or who can stop the project sponsor, they are all within this managing team. They are basically the approving authority. Even the Scrum Master and the product owner, they are answerable to this managing team. They are not directly contributing to the Scrum. Of course, they are out of this Scrum sprint, but they have interest in the project because they are investing a lot of money in this. So the product owner and the Scrum Master, they report to the managing team. When we talk about other roles, they could be the other stakeholders who are not directly contributing. As I quoted a few examples here, they could be consultants. So consultants who are helping out the Scrums in understanding different processes, the legal requirements, the technical requirements, the standards, the guidelines, the legal guidelines that are necessary. those stakeholders are also there in the other roles who support the Scrum in one way. And secondly, the customers is included in the other roles because whatever the sprints that we are achieving here, by the product owner and the Scrum Master, multiple meetings that are going to happen today, there is going to be frequent meetings with the customers. Earlier in the Waterfall methodology, this was not the case, right? So when an agile meeting is going on, or the agile approach is being followed by an organization, the customer is aware that my supplier is following this agile methodology and I am allowed to ask them these questions, right? So that is the reason why customers are also preferring for this agile methodology. So the customer is in one way also involved in the agile methodology or the Scrum method. And I think it is not written on the board here, but other roles we could also include the virtual stakeholders, the stakeholders who are not physically present in that location, but they are remotely located. So the consultants could be remotely located. Even the team members can be remotely located. We cannot disregard the virtual team members now with the work from home becoming more and more prominent. We will continue this agile approach, covering a little more topics. So let's have a look at what we have to learn today. So today's lecture is going to cover these three topics, the agile management together. So in this agile management, we will learn first about the agile stakeholder engagement. We have learned stakeholder management and stakeholder engagement in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition processes before, but that was totally focusing mostly on the traditional practices. So here we will learn in agile way how the same stakeholder engagement can be managed with a different mindset or a different approach. So we will learn new terms like agile charter. In the traditional way, we had project charter, if you remember. So here we will have agile charter to cover. So, and in addition to that, some agile methods to keep people engaged, like how we can engage the people. And a little bit also we will touch about conflict management in this area, the first area, agile stakeholder engagement. This will be our biggest topic for the day. And then we will cover with the planning part. In agile planning, what we will learn is some techniques, like time boxing technique, estimation, such things we will get to learn in the planning section. And the lastly, we will cover or conclude today's session with the problem solving section. So in this section, we will first understand what different types of problems are there, the risks when they are converted to issues, right? So what costs do we have to take care of, how to provide the solutions to these problems. All these things we will learn in the problem solving. All right. So without much delay, shall we move ahead? Agile stakeholder engagement. We have learned the details about stakeholder engagement in the stakeholder management processes, as I told you before. In this section, we will learn, the focus will be not to learn all those processes or the associated ITTOs again, but we will be focusing our approach to this stakeholder engagement. So instead of repeating the same processes, the techniques, outputs, inputs, tools and techniques that we need, if we just repeat the same thing, it's no fun, right? And we need not to. Here, what is expected of us in the PMP exam is whether we are able to answer these questions in this agile approach, agile methodology, or agile way of thinking or not, right? That is what we will be tested at. We were told that we will be having 50% of the questionnaire in the agile way. So what does that mean? The same question, of course, they'll not ask the same question, but if PMP wants if PMI wants, the same question can be asked in both ways. What will you do in a traditional way? What will you do in an agile way? So in this section, let us go a little bit deeper and understand how we can answer a particular type of question in an agile way. So when we do the same thing in agile way, the traditional soul of this topic is still going to stay the same, right? So all the processes that we have learned, that is not obsolete. Don't worry about it. The processes still are valid, but the way we think, our mindset is going to be agile way. So, like for example, the change is not so welcome in the traditional way. So in the agile way, we always welcome the change. So let's have a look in depth about what we can learn in this section.